on the last day, right? I know, I know. I'm sure. Well, thank you so much for being here. I'm Swati Shah. I'm Senior Vice President of Emerging Technology at US Bank. And we are on this modernization journey where I'm leading multiple pillars of modernization, and DevOps is one of the key pillars. So we are excited to be here and share some of our journey. And I have with me.
Hi, my name is Anton Fernando. I work in Swati's organization. I'm VP for engineering. I primarily work in the API space, but we are also a big contributor towards DevOps and things like that. And we are a major consumer for the DevOps tool change that Swati streams drive.
So what we are going to talk about it as US Bank, as you all know, we have thousands of engineers, and I don't have to introduce much about US Bank, but it's about the complexity that it brings in, right? So we are going to talk about tackling silos. I believe that you can't break down the silos, right? So the approach that we are taking is how do you tackle to drive initiative, and that's what we are going to talk about today. Now, before we jump in, we also wanted to make this more of conversational, so sorry if you decided to take a nap. We don't have a big audience. You are very visible. And second, would love to hear your perspective because it's not about us talking, it's about us learning from you too. So I will start with one question, right? And if you feel comfortable, raise your hand. If you just want to say loud, that's fantastic too. Tell me one word for DevOps, and it cannot be DevOps, right? What it means to you. Go ahead. Process, okay. Orchestration. Anybody else? Communication, fantastic. Collaboration, velocity, culture, optimization. Anybody else? Yeah. Say that again, Brandy. Swift.
Speed.
Speed, okay. Okay, I think you guys are brilliant. I don't think so we need to talk much about what we are going to say, but you all are right? And I think what we are going to talk today is, if I describe in one word, what you would hear between me and Anton is team sports, right? It's not one word, but it's two words, but it's kind of a teamwork that we do together as an organization. So what does DevOps accomplish? And I'm not going to tell you any magic that you don't know right now. It's about speed, it's about cost, it's about quality, right? And it's about everything that you talk about is communication, collaboration, and how we work together to make things very effective. Now, the way I see from enterprise perspective before we take little deeper dive on tackling silos is, my perspective on it is any initiative, and DevOps is, of course, one of the key initiative in modernization is there are three different angles, and there are many others, but three key angles that we would talk about today is enterprise human side of it. It's about how we feel as a team member, as an engineer, as a leader within the organization, right? So it's about how do you kind of tackle the human side of enterprise and bring everybody together. And that's what we would talk a little bit about it. The second piece is technology, enterprise technology, and Anton is going to talk a little bit more about it. If it's continuous delivery, how do we tackle the technology, tools, how do we scale, right? And what does that mean from a scale perspective? And third angle is from a financial perspective. I'm sure you are being constantly asked, or you are asking that question to yourself, what is the ROI on the investment that I'm making? I'm making on the tool, I'm making on the process. What does that efficiency? So financials are not always the very hard numbers, but also efficiency, developers experience, that's what you would hear a lot about from us in rest of the presentation. So everybody wants to be startup, everybody wants to work like a startup, right? And as a big scale organization, of course, every organization wants to move faster, including us as a US bank. And how do you kind of shape the behaviors, technology to act like a startup? And the reality is that companies like us, US Bank, we have been come together from mergers and acquisition for so many years, right? What does that mean? What does that mean? It's kind of so many technology coming in together, diversity of people coming together, which is fantastic. So many layers of security, like layers on top of layers, and sometimes we forget why do we even have that layer, right? But it just came from merger and acquisition. The process becomes so complicated, and then when we want to release, it seems like a ticking time bomb, right? Oh my God, did we catch everything that we wanted to? And how do we feel? Like this. Now, if you are building microservices, even at the scale of organization we are, which many of you would be doing it, and some of them are here, right here from US Bank, and that's moving pieces a little bit faster than if you have a monolithic and if you are trying to break down the monolithic, right? So what we are trying to do, or what we have been doing, and we have to do a lot of work on that journey still, is we are using three things in terms of tackling silos, especially on a human side of it, right? Communication. One of you said communication as DevOps, right? We are building that communication strategy. We are making sure that there is an inclusion from all different line of business, and how do we interact with each other in terms of learning from each other? Because sometimes not only enterprise teams are not always the one who would innovate. So how do we have that continuous loop with line of business in terms of learning? And we are using design thinking approach on that, right? The another one, you said collaboration, right? That's where we are using agile methodology in terms of how do we define those program team meetings? How do we include our stakeholders from the way start from, for example, security, compliance, risk, way start when we start the journey on DevOps. And that's what we did a couple of years back. Right, and kick off those where we come up with a shared goals and how we want to drive. And that has been a very big change for us in terms of how we are driving. Can we go faster than what we have been? Absolutely. But have we been successful in making it much more faster than the past? We have seen a lot of evolvement over there. The third one is contribution, and that's exactly why Anton is here, and I will let him talk about it, is how we as an organization are building an enterprise platform from technology perspective, where we kind of contribute, and we call it inner sourcing. I'm sure it's not an alien word to you, right? But it's within the organization and how we are doing inner sourcing in terms of having co-product owners and building a platform to accelerate the journey. So I will turn it around to Anton, and he will take us through the technology piece of it.
Okay, you guys are all still awake? Okay, so continuous delivery at scale, what does this really mean, right? So, I've been at US Bank for slightly more longer than a year, and I worked on several other technology companies. We used to have a single code base, 700 plus engineers, and 400 plus data scientists touching that code all the time while we're deploying continuously to production every day. That's like a major feat, right? Like, a lot of technology companies have perfected this. But, in an environment like a bank or a healthcare company, which is highly regulated, it's not really possible. There are a lot of regulatory requirements around what you can and cannot do. And when you can do something, how would you prove that you can do it? For example, let's say code quality, right? In a lot of places, we use something like Sonar to scan your code, and it tells you about your code quality. Maybe, let's take a simple example. Psychometric complexity tells you, hey, can your code be maintained? How much of branching logic do you have? A score of less than 10 is great. Anything in the hundreds range is probably not too good, right? Like, it's great, your code is working, but how are we going to maintain these things? So it's important to think about this at a higher level. So at an enterprise level, some of the things that we're trying to do right now at US Bank is doing things at scale and acting on data, collecting and acting on data. What I really mean by that is it's not that we don't know how to do CI/CD. We all do it. A lot of teams actually have their own clusters and do this pretty well. But DevOps is a little bit more than that, right? It's a little bit more about the sum of the parts than the actual parts. So for example, we'd like to understand a little bit more about the teams that are trying a new thing, let's say a new technology, or a team that does not understand a process, and because of that, they're breaking a build. There are other teams who understand processes very well, and they keep going, like, as though the team doesn't even exist. Nobody has even heard of this team because nothing fails. They're always great at what they do. So for us, like Swati said, we have a lot of acquisitions and we have a lot of technologies. We have a lot of engineers that come from different cultures, but now we are part of US Bank. And a lot of folks probably don't know about this. US Bank is just the 5th largest bank in the US, but we also have a lot of subsidiaries, right? Like we have this company called Elevon. They process credit card transactions. They're an API-only company. So for us, it is a little bit more than just deploying code to production. We want to do things at scale because we want to understand what is going on in the developers' lives and where we can help them. Where do they need training? Where can we invest money? Where do we need to pull back on investments, things like that. And we want to do it at scale, right? And we want to get good at it. I don't know why it's stuck. There you go. So one of the things that we are trying to do is, initially when we took a look at it, we like, okay, you know what? There are lots of Jenkins instances. How do we develop a pipeline that we can encourage people to contribute? That really means that the pipeline needs to be modular, right? So we originally started building this mostly for the API space. And basically what we did was we built a library with all these capabilities, and then we empowered the developers to say, hey, I like these things. So let's say I'm deploying to the cloud. Here are some capabilities to deploy to the cloud. Go build your own Jenkins files and put it in your code base, and boom, off you go. There is this other team that are still deploying to targeted servers. They need WAS and all those things set up. Here you go. These are capabilities we have. Go do your own thing. Now, there's this team sitting in the back. Those guys all work with modern technology, Cassandra, Kafka, things like that. And a lot of times, we might not have these capabilities built in, and they can simply come to the enterprise pipeline and say, okay, you know what, I'm going to build these capabilities, and others are going to benefit from this. And we kind of encourage that kind of behavior by building modular components that end users can put together. So, for example, we have all these pipeline libraries, and this clicker is not working, guys. Sorry about this. Yeah. So, so if you want to check out a repo, if you want to do a Maven build, if you want to perform a Sonar scoop scan, so maybe that is all you need, like a Fortify scan, for example. So one of the things that we're trying to get good at is, by scanning and measuring the code quality, finding vulnerabilities within a code and things like that, we're trying to give feedback to the developers almost immediately. So we're trying to shift as much of these things possible to the left, so developers know that there are issues with their code, and they can address it early in the development lifecycle. In the past, it's always been the opposite, right? Like what will happen is you'd spend all this time and effort, and you'll develop all these things, and then towards the end, you'll have an engagement with the security team. They'll scan your code, and they'll tell you, you have 100 high vulnerabilities, go fix it today, which is very, very expensive. So we're slowly moving. Now, I'm not saying we're really good at it yet, but it's a start. Like we have come a long way in the last year. Pipeline jobs. So one of the cool things about US Bank right now, the things that I'm really excited about is the whole migration to the cloud. Now, some of you guys might have taken it for granted, right? Like, you guys live in the Bay Area. This all happens automatically. I have a brother-in-law who works at LinkedIn. But a bank, it's not that easy. The regulatory bodies are always on you trying to figure out what is it that you're trying to do, what value does it bring, and what does it mean for risk and compliance. You are, you guys have probably heard about this massive data breach, internal bad actor from Capital One, right? 100 million accounts have been compromised. Now, when I talk about regulatory bodies, that is what they care about. Hey, you're dealing with confidential customer information. How are you going to keep it safe within your own walls? And if you want to migrate to the cloud, show me how this can happen in a safe and secure way. So for us, measuring code quality, vulnerabilities, things like that are really, really important. And acting on that is even more important. But the other big thing that we always care about is evidence. When the audit folks come and sit with your team, you need to show them you did all these things. It's not just you telling me. You need to literally sit there and prove. SonarQube scans, how many scans have happened in the last 1 month? How many scans have failed? What are the things that are important to you guys? And why did this thing go through when, let's say, 2% of your test cases failed? And it's okay, right? Like, 2% of those test cases could be nice to have test cases, not must-have test cases. That's okay. But you need to show them proof of all of these things. I actually have a big exercise going on right now where I'm working with risk and compliance for some of my applications where I'm collecting all this evidence. Let's say you have a web app, you have Selenium tests running, and you have all these screenshots and, all these test results. Package it, dump it into a file server by date. So when these guys come to us, we want to be able to show, hey, look at this. Over the last 6 months, we have had 800 builds. Every build went through a regression test. Every one of our test cases passed or failed or whatever it is. Being able to show that is really important. So how do we do this, right? Like for us, we initially, when we started working with the open source version of Jenkins. But one of the things that we quickly found out was it doesn't scale as much. Now, we're trying to solve this problem more enterprise-wide and not at an individual team or even a handful of team level, right? Like, we want to solve it at a very high level. So that really means that we want to be able to leverage technologies that scale well. So Cloud-based has really worked well for us. So for source control, we use GitLab. We do a lot of our security scans using Fortify. These are all standard tools. We use JFrog for artifact management. So cloud is something new, and like I said, highly regulated industries takes you a while to show that these are safe technologies to use, right? And we are actually on the cutting edge right now. Some of the teams are actually deploying to at least an internal cloud environment right now, internal Kubernetes cluster. Eventually, at least get your applications cloud native. So when we are actually ready for the public cloud, we can take it there, right? We currently even building capabilities to deploy to AWS and Azure. Sorry, can we go back one more thing? Yeah. So we also have to. So a lot of folks build and deploy stuff here, right? And you never have to create a ticket, for example, for a release train. But for us, like I said, we need to follow certain processes. You cannot go to UAT or the prod environments without a ticket created for change management and approved by a release train manager, right? So those are the kinds of things that we're kind of working on. We scan, we use Fullstack to scan for any issues within the container itself. SonarQube, we are currently working on, Swati and her teams are working on, okay, we collect all these metrics. What are we going to do about it, right? Like, for example, what is a good gate check for SonarQube? Like, let's say there's a team who has never done any unit tests. Like, maybe we start with 20%, right? Like, we need to encourage these teams to do this on their own. And then, directionally, they need to get better. So what I mean by that is as you add more lines of code, you don't want your test cases going down. It's got to either stay flat or it needs to go up. So those are some of the things that Swati and our team are working on, and we kind of partner with her to see how we can make our own applications better so it kind of serves as a reference implementation. Okay, so, it has been a long journey for us. so some of the takeaways from this is, there's really no such thing as a perfect tool chain. Like everything else that we do in engineering, right? There's trial and error, and you learn from your mistakes and move on. Um, don't set your expectations so high that you're not able to achieve anything. Stay focused. Don't try to boil the ocean. And then don't ever go big bang, right? Like don't ever build, don't ever wait for 100 features to be added before you can go live. Go live with what you have so, you can get the value out. And a lot of things that we do is, for example, we do a lot of tech talks within the company. We even bring folks from outside. And Swati's organization does a whole bunch of other things as well in terms of training material, videos, things like that. So we can keep that momentum going. So we are not the only ones, or Swati's teams are not the only ones who are solving it. We are asking others to come, collaborate, and contribute. Now, we need to definitely talk about this word culture. I think somebody mentioned it here. And that's a really important word because we are really moving away from teams that only cared about their stuff and their pipelines and their applications to thinking more strategically at an enterprise level to say, okay, how can we add value to the enterprise? How can I contribute to the whole and not just worry about our own teams? So, which is a big shift in the thought process, and more people are kind of, lining up to come and hear what what we're trying to do. And there are others who have taken it the next step to say, okay, you know what, I'm going to help the company. I'm going to help myself, and in that process, I'm going to help others. So overall, that's been our journey. Like I said, we are not anywhere close to being where we really want to be, but it is a long way for us, for a bank, especially, to get this far. Any questions? Sure. Mm-hmm.
I think that's a fantastic question, right? And many times we keep on waiting on each other who does first, right? So the approach is what we encourage within the organization, and that's what some of the teams started doing. As I said, enterprise is not the only one always innovate, right? But as teams work together and one team does it, and when we as an engineer see it, that this is something is possible, right? It makes you so excited, and I think that takes it to the scale that how can we scale this now. So the behavior is more of empowerment. We are not top-down culture. We engineers and engineering organization, we continuously innovate. And if you want to talk after this, session here, I would highly encourage either talk to Anton, talk to Biju, and some of what we are doing at US Bank Cutting Edge Technology, it's not an old US Bank anymore. So it starts somewhere, and as an engineer, we want to learn, and I think learning is the behavior that we are encouraging through, if that helps.
Yeah, definitely. As an engineering culture, we want to the very first thing that we want to really embrace is curiosity, because when you show engineers value, they'll buy into it, right? So that really means that we need to first get them curious. That really means our learning culture, and that's where the tech talks and things like that help. Because oftentimes, what we have realized is, when let's say if we go have a tech talk, and there'll be a bunch of questions, things like that, and then there's a whole bunch of follow-up emails that come after that. They're like, hey, can you have a more focused demo for my team? I am interested in contributing. How would I do it? Things like that. And, it's mostly about forming relationships, right? Because we are, US Bank is a very large organization. We are nationwide. And we have some colleagues here from the West Coast. We are in the Midwest. And, we have teams all over. And it's kind of difficult sometimes when you cannot put some face to a person to build those relationships. And these kinds of activities like tech talks and demos and show and tells kind of builds those relationships so we can collaborate more efficiently.
Is there anything else anybody wants to add? Because I'm sure some of your organizations are doing that too, and if they are doing differently, we would love to learn from you. So if you think you want to add something to it, please.
I do have a question.
Sure.
Guys, you guys mentioned about like have all those components that you can build on top, right? And part of the like to break the culture and to collaborate more. How important was for you guys to actually not be a top-down kind of like, hey, we build this, you guys have to use it. But the approach that you guys using by having that as an in-source, right? And inviting the community because that's what like engineers like to think, like, hey, I want to be part of that, right? I think I've been writing pipelines before this all like movement came. I can actually contribute that. So what was the impact of the Indian source on the on US Bank, Brian?
So I can take that. I think, I still think we are in a start of the journey, right? And it's picking up. For example, now one of our teams said, oh, we are going to contribute one of the module for Cassandra, right? So I think it takes a while at the level of scale, as much as we are trying and continuously try to do better job of talking about inner sourcing and what value it is and showing the examples. I think we have seen tremendous value out of it. For example, Anton's team contributed one template, which is for API, right? And it's not one API, we have hundreds of API, and now all of those are taking an advantage of it, and it's where it is because of one team contributed. Now, if some other team is going to start building those APIs, they can just leverage this, and kind of it's proven. It went through compliance and risk and all the different vetting that we need to do within organization, and they don't need to go through all of them, and they are where they are in terms of how we accelerate. So that's how we are approaching one team at a time. It takes time to reach with the scale that we are, but it's about leaders like Anton and Biju and others stepping up in terms of helping to set examples to show the value and contribute. That's what changes the culture.
Yeah, we definitely want an inviting culture. We don't want to ever push anybody into anything that they don't really want to do. I definitely would not like it, and I know how engineers are. Swati knows I still have quite a lot of commits on GitLab myself. But the thing is, I do know that engineers respond to value, right? They're very logical. As engineers, we're very logical creatures, and when we see numbers and when we understand the value, we respond to it. I think, and mostly, yeah, and we respond to it, either in a positive way or negative way. That depends, right? When you see, good value being added, like you want to be part of this and you want to drive that. But let's say, we are not good at some things, and then you want to act on it. You want to go and do something about it. So that's the culture we're really trying to form. And the real challenge is like we're geographically dispersed. We don't really know much, and it's difficult to build relationships. And those are the kinds of things that we're working on right now.
I would add to on that point, on a technology side of it, we are building in a way that as an engineer, when I join US Bank, or as an engineer of US Bank, when I want to start using enterprise tool, we are working towards making it so easy in terms of onboarding to all the tools and the templates that in matter of minutes you can start functioning, right? So that's the differentiation on enterprise level that my teams are working towards very aggressively, is how effective and easy. It's all about developers' experience, right? And that's where we do design thinking workshop, get the feedback of what frictions we have as an engineer. And I literally log in when we publish something and see myself how many frictions we have, right? And in terms of every leader does that in my organization, but getting feedback directly from internal end user who are as an engineer and kind of evolve from there. So that's our focus, making it very effective for developers' experience. And we still have a lot of work to do though.
Yeah, and senior leadership, is really important. I think they buy into this, right? Swati literally leads an organization, like a group called Friction Reduction right now. That's exactly the name of that group. and it's only focused on the developer experience. Nobody else. We don't care about the tellers or the cashiers or anybody else who works at US Bank. That group is focused on making the life of a developer better, giving them the right tools to do their right jobs, right? And that is where US Bank is, and a year ago we wouldn't probably have done this.
Yeah, sure.
I can take this. So yeah, you're right. So change comes at an expense, right? Like DevOps is about full stack teams. That really means that within a team, I have security experts. I have front end developers, back end developers, QA testers. There's no real QA tester. You guys own the code. You guys let to take care of the whole thing. That really means that some of the traditional operations kind of work is being shifted to the development teams, right? So I can see why there's going to be some tension there. But, so we are having those conversations right now to see, okay, there are people within the operations group who want to be part of it. What do we do with them? And there are others who will never be part of it. We need to just recognize that, there are always going to be folks, especially who are close to retirement and things like that. They're never going to want to be part of it. They're used to working a certain way. It doesn't mean they don't bring value, right? They're still valuable for where we are at now. But a lot of things that we're doing is not for the now. We are positioning US Bank for the future. The future engineers or the engineers who really care about these things slowly start moving away from the operation space into DevOps.
Yeah. What I could also add to that is one is it's as an organization, are you going towards a full stack organization, full stack teams or full stack train, whatever you call from an agile perspective, right? We are not saying that it's impacting anything on the operations as a headcount right now, but what we are focusing on, our operations piece of it was very focused on what I call it site stability, right? Something broke, how do you fix it? And it's more about keeping it stable. Now, more and more teams, as they are taking more of operations side and a full stack organization, our operations piece is starting to focus more aggressively around site reliability. Like, how do we mature more and more from a scalability, reliability perspective? So their roles are changing and becoming more and more advanced role, if that helps.
I can give you a really specific example. So let's, like banking applications are more internet facing, right? Like, you'll have to do a lot of things. And part of that is an application penetration testing. And traditionally, what we do is we'll develop the application, send it off to security, they do whatever, they give us a report. You have so many highs, you'll have to fix it right away. If it's moderate, they'll give you 90 days, whatever, right? So one of the conversations we're having right now is, look, this is all great information, but we need to know this when we're developing, okay? That really means that I and my teams need to understand how to do application penetration testing. And they're receptive to it. Like, they understand that, think about it like this, right? Like, it's very expensive. We're trying to shift as much possible to the left to reduce cost, because what happens traditionally is it goes for penetration testing. We have to hire third parties to do this. It's expensive. They find issues, come back, fix it. They'll have to do one more now, and they probably find more. But if we are good at it, like, that's what traditionally full stack teams are supposed to do. And when we reached out to ISS, they're cautiously optimistic about it. Like, this would have not happened, let's say 5 years ago, right? They would be like, no, you can do it, we'll do it, shut down. But now they're willing to at least have that conversation with us to say, okay, you know what, that seems like a good idea. Let's see how we can build those skills in you guys. That kind of those are the conversations we are having now. Anything else?
Those were great questions, and credit goes to you guys. You survived after a lunch break with this whole session and still engaged so much. We can take one more question if you have. No? Okay, time to go home then. Thank you so much, guys. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.